Midnight in colonial Cuba, 1804. The air thick with humidity and the sweet, cloying smell of burning sugarcane. Every soul on Hacienda San Cristóbal sleeps, every soul except one. In the shadows between slave quarters and the grand house, a man moves silently across cobblestones still warm from the day's brutal sun. His bare feet make no sound. His heart pounds so loud he fears it will wake the dead. This is Tomás, 28 years old, enslaved since birth, and for the past 3 years, every single night at precisely midnight, he has climbed the marble staircase to the private chambers of the woman who owns him, Isabel de Valcárcel, the beautiful widow, the ruthless mistress, the most feared and desired woman in all of Matanzas province. What happens behind those heavy mahogany doors, locked from the inside? Why does Tomás accept this nocturnal ritual without fighting back, without running, without telling a soul? And how does this twisted relationship finally end? This is not just another story of slavery. This is a story of psychological warfare, of manipulation so sophisticated it makes physical chains look merciful, of a man who had to sacrifice everything he loved to taste freedom, of a widow who discovered that owning someone's body is nothing compared to owning their soul. This is the true story of how Tomás became the most powerful man on a plantation without anyone knowing, and how that power cost him everything that made him human. Let me take you back to where it all began. November 1804, 3 months after the death of Don Rodrigo de Valcárcel, the brutal plantation owner who had built San Cristóbal into one of Cuba's most profitable sugar estates. Don Rodrigo had been a monster, the kind of man who whipped slaves for sport, who separated families as punishment, who worked human beings to death and simply bought more. When he died suddenly, probably poisoned by one of his many enemies, everyone expected the hacienda to collapse. Instead, something unexpected happened. His widow took control, and she was nothing like her husband. Isabel de Valcárcel was 35 years old, raven black hair always pulled into a severe bun, emerald green eyes that seemed to see straight through you, skin pale as porcelain, protected obsessively from the Caribbean sun. She dressed in black silk as Spanish mourning customs demanded, but the cut of those dresses, the flash of gold at her throat and wrists, the way she moved through rooms like she owned not just the hacienda but the very air itself, that was pure power. Isabel had arrived in Cuba from Seville at 18, married off to a man 3 decades older. She had learned fast, learned that in this world, a woman alone had no voice. But a clever woman, a woman willing to do what others wouldn't, that woman could have everything. And Isabel wanted everything. She also wanted Tomás, not at first. At first, she barely noticed him among the 200 other slaves working her fields. But Isabel was observant. She noticed things, like how the South Cane field suddenly avoided blight because someone had warned the overseers early, like how the mill equipment worked more efficiently after someone reorganized the tools, like how there was one slave who could do mathematical calculations in his head faster than her Spanish-educated administrator. That slave was Tomás. Tomás was different. He had taught himself to read by watching the plantation owners' children study with their European tutors. He would peek through windows, memorize letters, practice writing in the dirt, and erase it before anyone saw. He understood numbers, understood crop rotations, understood the complex machinery of sugar production better than men who'd studied agriculture in Spain. And most dangerous of all, he understood people, could read their intentions, predict their moves. That combination of intelligence and invisibility made him dangerous, made him valuable, made him perfect for what Isabel had in mind. The first summons came on a Tuesday night. 2 sharp knocks on the door of the slave quarters where Tomás slept packed with 10 other men. Every slave's worst nightmare. A midnight knock. Tomás's blood turned to ice. What had he done? Was he being sold, punished, executed? In colonial Cuba, a nocturnal summons from the big house meant one thing: trouble. The kind you don't come back from. Prudencio stood in the doorway, the mestizo butler who ran Isabel's household with ruthless efficiency. Tomás, the señora requires you. Now. Don't make her wait. The walk from slave quarters to the main house felt like walking to the gallows. Tomas's hands trembled. His mind raced through every interaction he'd had with the overseers. Every word he'd spoken. What had he said wrong? What rule had he broken? The marble stairs felt cold under his bare feet. At the top, Prudencio stopped before massive carved doors. "Remember your place," he hissed. Then he was gone. Tomás was alone. He pushed the door open. The room beyond took his breath away. Rich carpets, furniture imported from Europe, candles everywhere, casting dancing shadows. And seated by the window, backlit by moonlight, was Isabel de Valcárcel. She held a crystal glass of red wine. Her black dress seemed to absorb the light. For a full minute she said nothing, just looked at him, studied him like he was an interesting insect. Tomás kept his eyes on the floor. That was the rule. Slaves don't look at masters, especially not female masters, especially not alone in their bedrooms at midnight. "Look at me." Her voice was soft, deadly soft. Tomás raised his eyes. "They tell me you're intelligent, that you can read, do mathematics, understand how this plantation works better than the idiots I pay to run it." She took a slow sip of wine. "I've been watching you, Tomás, for months now. I know you saved the South Field. I know you fixed the mill. I know you can calculate harvest yields in your head. And I know you're smart. Enough to keep that intelligence hidden. Smart enough to let white men take credit for your ideas." She stood, walked toward him. Too close. Tomás could smell her perfume. Something expensive. Something that shouldn't exist in the same universe as his sweat-stained reality. "I need someone I can trust. Someone who will tell me the truth. Every overseer I have is either stupid or stealing from me. Every business partner wants to take advantage of the poor widow. Every neighboring plantation owner wants to see me fail. But you, Tomás, you have no reason to lie to me. You have every reason to help me succeed, because if I fail, this plantation gets sold, and you get sold with it, probably to a mine, where you'll be dead in 6 months. The threat hung in the air like smoke. So here's what's going to happen. Every night at midnight, you will come to this room. You will tell me everything. Everything you see, everything you hear, every problem, every threat, every rumor among the slaves, every corruption among the overseers, everything. And in return," she paused, smiled, "in return I will protect you, give you privileges. And someday, if you serve me well, I will consider your freedom." Freedom. The word hit Tomás like a physical blow. No slave ever heard that word from a master's mouth. It was a fantasy, a dream, a lie used to extract obedience. But hearing it spoken aloud in that candlelit room did something to Tomás, planted a seed, a terrible, dangerous, seductive seed. "Do you understand?" Isabel asked. "Yes, Señora." "Good, now go. And Tomás, if you tell anyone about these meetings, I will destroy you. Not just sell you, destroy you. Do we understand each other?" "Yes, Señora." Tomás left that room shaking. He didn't know it yet, but that conversation had just sentenced him to 3 years of the most sophisticated, psychological torture ever devised. Because Isabel didn't just want his intelligence, she wanted all of him. And she was willing to, systematically, dismantle his entire life to get it. For the first 6 weeks, the midnight meetings were exactly what Isabel had promised. Business discussions. Tomás would report on crop conditions, identify corrupt overseers skimming profits, warn about potential slave rebellions, analyze market conditions for sugar prices. Isabel would listen intently, take notes, ask sharp questions. She was brilliant. Tomás had to admit that. Everything he told her she absorbed instantly, made decisions faster than any man he'd known, gave orders that solved problems he'd been observing for years. The hacienda began to thrive under her leadership, or rather under their secret partnership, because that's what it was becoming. Tomás was the eyes and ears. Isabel was the voice and authority. Together they ran San Cristóbal better than Don Rodrigo ever had. The other slaves noticed Tomás's special treatment, small things, better rations, lighter work assignments. No beatings even when he made mistakes. They whispered, speculated. But Tomás told no one the truth. The price of these meetings was absolute secrecy, and he valued his life. But then came the 6th week, the night everything changed. Tomás climbed the marble stairs as usual. Midnight as always. But when he entered Isabel's chamber, she wasn't seated at her desk. She was lying on her bed, hair down, loose, cascading over her shoulders in black waves. Wearing only a thin white silk robe, every alarm in Tomás's head screamed danger. "Lock the door." Her voice was different, softer, hungry. "Señora, I didn't ask what you think. Lock the door." Tomás's hands moved before his mind could process. Turned the key. The click echoed like a gunshot. "Come here. Sit." She patted the bed beside her. This was it. The real reason for the midnight summons, the real price of his privileges. Tomás understood in that instant that he had been played from the beginning. The business discussions were just preparation, just a way to get him comfortable, to make him dependent on these meetings, to make him complicit. Now came the truth. "Are you afraid of me, Tomás?" Isabel asked, watching him with those emerald eyes. "Yes, señora. Good. You should be. But you should also understand something important. In this world, fear is power, and I need your fear as much as I need your loyalty." She reached out, touched his face. Her fingers were cold. "You're different from the others. Not just your mind. There's something about you, something that makes me feel—" She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she kissed him. Tomás froze. His entire body went rigid. This was wrong. This was dangerous. This would destroy him. But Isabel de Valcárcel was not a woman who accepted refusal, and Tomás was not a man who had the right to refuse. That night, the relationship crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. From then on, for 3 solid years, Tomás would climb those stairs every midnight, would enter that room, would serve Isabel in ways that had nothing to do with crop reports and everything to do with the twisted psychology of power. Because here's what made this so much worse than simple sexual exploitation. Isabel genuinely needed Tomás's intelligence. During the day, he remained invisible, just another slave. But at night, he became the true administrator of San Cristóbal, made every important decision, solved every crisis. While Isabel's official administrator, a useless Spanish drunkard named Don Gaspar, spent his days in Matanzas brothels, Tomás ran everything. The plantation prospered. Neighbors whispered that the widow had supernatural luck. They had no idea her luck had a name, had a face, had a mind sharper than any of theirs. Tomás became addicted to that power, even as he hated the price he paid for it. But Tomás had a family, a wife named Amara, a woman of Yoruba descent, captured in Africa and brought to Cuba in chains at 14. Amara was strong, a midwife who delivered slave babies and healed with herbs. She was everything good in Tomás's life. They had a son, Mateo, 4 years old, bright-eyed, curious, the only thing that made slavery bearable. Every morning Tomás would hold Mateo and whisper, "Someday, Hijo, someday you'll be free." It was a prayer, a promise, a lie he desperately wanted to be truth. But when the midnight summons began, Amara noticed Tomás leaving every night, noticed him returning at dawn smelling of perfume and candle wax, noticed the guilt carved into his face. She confronted him. "Where do you go?" Tomás couldn't lie to her. The big house, the señora's chambers. Amara's face crumbled. "Why? I have no choice." "There's always a choice. You choose her over us every night. If I refuse, she'll sell us, separate us."
"I've seen what happens to rebellious slaves, Amara. They don't just die, they're tortured, and their families are destroyed as examples."
"I can't risk that. Can't risk you. Can't risk Mateo." Amara turned her back. "Then you've already lost us." She was right. From that night, Amara stopped speaking to him. Their marriage died in silence. Worse, Amara began talking to other slaves. The rumors spread. Tomás is the mistress's whore. That's why he gets special treatment. The other slaves looked at him with contempt. The overseers grew suspicious. And Isabel heard every whisper. One night, Isabel delivered her ultimatum. "Your wife is creating problems. She needs to go." Tomás's blood went cold. "I'll talk to her. Make her stop. Too late. I've already decided. I'm selling her to a plantation in Camagüey, 200 kilometers away. You'll never see her again. No, please, anything but that." Isabel walked to him, put her hand on his chest, felt his heart hammering. I'll make you a deal. I'll free your son. Give Mateo legal manumission. He'll never be a slave. But only if you ask me to sell Amara. You have to choose your wife or your son's freedom. You have to be the one who sacrifices her. It was the cruelest thing imaginable. Isabel didn't just want to destroy his marriage. She wanted Tomás to be the author of that destruction. Wanted him bound to her with chains of guilt that could never be broken. Wanted Amara to hate him forever, so he'd have nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. Only Isabel. 3 days later, after no sleep and no food, tortured beyond endurance, Tomás spoke the words that would haunt him forever. Sell Amara, but free Mateo. A week later, Amara was chained and loaded onto a cart. Tomás went to say goodbye. She looked at him with such hatred that he felt his soul shatter. I hope your son's freedom was worth your soul, she whispered, because you just sold it to the devil. The cart rolled away. Tomás watched until it disappeared. In that moment, he understood what Isabel had done. She hadn't just taken his wife, she'd taken his humanity, made him complicit in his own destruction, made him choose between two impossible loves, and in doing so, she'd ensured he would never forgive himself, never be whole again, would always need her, because only she understood what he'd sacrificed. Only she could make that sacrifice mean something. But here's what Isabel didn't count on. Guilt can turn into rage, and rage, properly channeled, becomes power. Over the next 2 years, something changed in Tomás. He stopped being the victim, started being the strategist. He realized something crucial. Isabel needed him as much as he needed her. She depended on his intelligence to keep the plantation profitable, depended on his silence to protect her reputation, depended on their midnight rituals to fill the emotional void eating her alive. Isabel de Valcárcel, the most powerful woman in Matanzas, was emotionally enslaved to a man who legally had no power whatsoever. And once Tomás understood that, everything changed. When rival plantation owners began sabotaging San Cristóbal, burning fields and breaking equipment, Tomás solved it, used Santeria. Rituals learned from elderly slaves to terrorize the saboteur, made it look like dark magic protected Isabel's land. The attacks stopped immediately. Isabel looked at him differently after that, with something like respect, maybe even fear. When Isabel's reputation was destroyed by public scandal at church, when a rival widow humiliated her in front of all Matanzas society, Isabel collapsed, locked herself in her room for 3 days, wept. Her social standing was ruined. Everything she'd built was gone. That's when Tomás made his move, not as a slave, as a negotiator. You have nothing left to lose now, he told her. So you're finally free to do what you actually want. What's that? Survive, and you need me to do it. But this time, on my terms. Isabel stared at him. What are you asking for? My freedom. Legal manumission. I'll stay and save this plantation. But not as your property. As your partner, your official administrator. Give me your surname. Make me Tomás de Valcárcel. Make it legal. That's my price. For a long moment, Isabel said nothing. Then she laughed. Not from madness. From recognition. She'd created a monster, taught him everything she knew, and now he was using it against her. You're far cleverer than I ever imagined, she whispered. I learned from the best, Tomás replied. 2 weeks later, he had his freedom papers, signed, sealed, legal, Tomás de Valcárcel, free man, administrator of San Cristóbal. That night, Isabel called him to her chambers one last time. Will you come to my bed tonight? She asked softly. For the first time in 3 years, Tomás had the power to say no. And he did. No. Isabel smiled sadly. I knew you'd say that. Tell me, Tomás. Did you ever feel anything real for me? Or was it all just survival? He thought carefully. I felt many things. Hate, fear, rage, and yes, sometimes something that might have been affection. But I'll never know if it was real, or just my mind's way of surviving hell. Do you hate me? No, because hate takes energy, and I have none left for you. Then what do you feel? Pity. For both of us. We destroyed each other. Isabel died 2 years later, left Tomás enough of the plantation to live comfortably. But more importantly, she left him proof that intelligence and patience could triumph over the cruelest system ever devised. After her death, Tomás tried freeing all the slaves on San Cristobal. The colonial authorities nearly executed him for it. He was exiled to New Orleans instead. Took Mateo, now 12, with him. They built a new life, modest but free. But Tomás was haunted by one question. Amara, was she alive? Did she hate him still? When Mateo turned 18, they traveled back to Cuba, searched for months, finally found her working as a cook on a plantation in Camagüey. She was 42, worn by hard labor. When she saw Tomás, tears streamed down her face. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Is our son really free?" "Yes, Mama," Mateo said. "I'm free." Amara collapsed into her son's arms, sobbing. Then she looked at Tomás. "Was it worth it?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Was it?" She touched Mateo's face, saw the education, the dignity, the freedom. "Yes," she whispered. "It was worth it." Tomás bought her freedom, brought her to New Orleans. They never remarried, never fully reconciled. But they lived as a family, broken but together. Tomás died in 1835 at 59, left behind a small import business. Mateo became an abolitionist, used his father's story to fight slavery. Amara lived to 68, surrounded by grandchildren who would never know chains. The ruins of Hacienda San Cristóbal still stand in Matanzas, overgrown, forgotten. But the story survived, passed down through generations of freed slaves, a story about the highest price of freedom, about a man who had to destroy everything he loved to save his son, about a widow who discovered that owning someone's body is nothing compared to owning their soul, and about how, even in hell, intelligence and patience can forge a key to unlock any chain, even the ones we put on ourselves.